As a result of the lockdowns around the world, and also as a result of people losing their jobs from the decline in trade as a result of COVID, the World Food Programme expects that food insecurity could double in 2020, so rising to up to 265 million people experiencing food insecurity globally. And one thing that is particularly troubling is the fact that over the past decade or so, we have already seen a slowdown in the rate of reduction in food insecurity globally. And so food insecurity has already been a pressing global challenge, and eradicating hunger is one of the Sustainable Development Goals agreed in 2015. And so how does that link in to my research on trade? Well, the question, of course, the million-dollar question is, how do we eradicate food insecurity? Or perhaps more modestly phrased, how do we reduce it? And trade is, in fact, one of the means which has, for a long time, been cited as a potential route to reducing food insecurity. And trade policies span many sectors and many policies. And something that we've begun to learn largely from economic studies around the world over the past decade is that trade can also create winners and losers. And so whilst we might expect that trade liberality could lead to a reduction in food prices or an increase in the diversity of foods that are available within a particular country, but does it really if it also leads people to lose their jobs or leads to some economic dislocation that can affect their ability to afford nutritious foods? So what we looked at in our paper, by using a very unique data set made available by Gallup. Gallup is a private company who conducts international polls on a variety of issues around the world. And several years ago, they worked with the World Food Programme to introduce a model that would capture food insecurity across many dimensions. So not just looking at the availability of food in a particular area, but also looking at whether people could afford and access it. And so we need to capture all of these dimensions of food insecurity to fully capture the effect of trade policy on food insecurity. One of the motivations for doing this study was the fact that liberal trade policy is often seen as an engine for achieving a wide range of social goals. But the question that we had in our paper was, whether these benefits are shared evenly in terms of food insecurity. And indeed, what we find is that there is substantial variation between countries, between rich and poor countries, and across the income distribution in the relationship between trade and food insecurity. In the paper, we find that liberal trade policy largely corresponds to reduced food insecurity in high-income countries. And why is that? Well, we certainly need to do more research to better understand exactly why this is the case and what is driving that. But it could be the fact that high-income countries have much better developed social and public infrastructures which enable people to actually benefit economically from trade, whereas in many poor countries around the world, sometimes the benefits from trade are very concentrated in certain areas, and that means that they don't necessarily benefit from trade to the same extent. The policy takeaway from our paper is certainly not that we should no longer be promoting trade between countries, but rather the fact that in order for liberal trade policy to be successful in enabling people to experience reduced food insecurity, we may need complementary measures in place to ensure that these benefits are shared evenly.